Okay. All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sassquad Trail Runners RunVenture Zoom series. I am here with my friend Michael Ortiz, and we are going to chat with him about his incredible Game of Hundos RunVenture when he ran a 100-mile race every weekend for 100 weeks. So we will have time for Q&A at the end. So drop your questions in the live chat, and then I will read them to Michael towards the end of our talk. So before we start, I want to share just a little bit of background with you on Sassquad Trail Running. I'll keep this really short so we can have as much time as possible to chat with Michael. We started hosting trail parties in 2018 and now have trail races all around the state of New Jersey. This fall, we've been able to return to our in-person events. The Squatchy Leftovers is our next race that's coming up on November 28th at the South Mountain Reservation in West Orange, New Jersey. That is the weekend of Thanksgiving. So we will have a 5K and a 10K on that day. And we will offer two different start times at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. so everyone can spread out. We're limiting each start time to 100 spots. So register quickly. That's on ultrasignup.com. And then our final in-person race for the year is scheduled for December 19th at the Malin Dickerson Reservation in Jefferson, New Jersey. We have the permit approved from Morris County, and registration should go live this week. That event is a night race. It's our Ugly Sweater night race. I have a meeting with the parks tomorrow morning over at the trails to finalize the loop we will be using, and then registration should go live for that, and that will also be on ultrasignup.com. All right, I promised I would keep that brief. Usually it's a little bit longer. But so we have Michael Ortiz is here. I have been following Michael's story since he began this incredible 100-mile run venture back in 2018. I can remember when I first heard about it and the Game of Hundos, and I was out on the trails with my friends and I was telling them about it. We were just blown away by this quest to run a 100-mile race every weekend for 100 weeks. So about 2 weeks ago, Michael finished it up on the grand finale by completing 100 miles around New York City and finishing in his hometown, Brooklyn. And again, I said I'd keep it brief. That is about all I'm going to share because the whole point of tonight is to hear Michael's story in his own words. So our loose plan is to chat about how and why Mike started running, how he ended up running ultra marathons, and of course, how the Game of Hundos came about. So and we're also going to spend some time chatting about the last 100 that was over in Brooklyn. And again, we'll finish with Q&A, so you can hop in this live chat, drop them, and I will read them to Michael. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It's my pleasure, Kim.
We appreciate you being here, and we would just want to start out with how, why, when did you start your running journey?
Okay, so I guess I was always a casual runner, and I use casual like loosely. There was one race on the calendar that I would make sure to participate in, and that was the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge. And so that was the very first race that I got involved with, and that that's it's a 5K in Central Park, and it's the I mean they've got races all over the world, but the one in New York City is in Central Park, and it's one of those things where everyone signs up for, right? So like everyone in the company signs up for it, not just where I work, but everyone in any other company signs up for this. And what it winds up being is 15,000 runners, or 30,000 runners rather, running in Central Park over 2 days. And
that's a lot of running.
It's a lot of running. It's a really large event, and so that I participated in that like as early as 2007 or 2008, and that's the only running I would do like all year. And then that was in June, and so like I would train for that 5K by doing like random like 1-2 mile runs on the treadmill the month leading up to it. So that wasn't really, that I wouldn't call that running, per se. It was just like okay, there's a race. Here's the usual like yearly annual 5K. Everyone signs up for it. I want to be a part of it too, and there you go.
Right.
I would say that I started running like really running when I moved to Brooklyn, and that was in 2013. And it was mainly so it was twofold, right? It was I start like I was born and raised in Manhattan, and I didn't know anything about the outer boroughs, right? Like I had friends who lived in Queens, I had friends who lived in the Bronx, and I knew of those outer boroughs, but I never ventured anywhere like really past Manhattan, right? Because I didn't understand them, I didn't know them. And Manhattan, like especially Upper Manhattan, is just like has a grid system that I understood, right? So streets and avenues are numbered, and that made sense to me. And like you venture outside of Manhattan, all of a sudden you're going into name streets and streets that don't look like a grid, and it's like I don't understand. I like where am I kind of thing, right? So I moved to Brooklyn. And one of the main ways that like I figured I can move around and discover and explore the neighborhood was by running, right? So on the weekends, I would set out to throw on my running shoes and then start with no agenda really, just running around Brooklyn. And I would start really easy, right? So like along the Brooklyn Bridge waterfront, because that's a beautiful place to run.
Right.
And it started with all right, run the entire waterfront, which at the time, and then back to my house, which at the time it seemed like, all right, that's a decent run. That's a decent run. It's like 4 miles.
Yeah. Perspective, right?
Yeah, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And the period, it only goes so for so long, right? But at the time, it felt like I was doing work, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome.
Right.
But then that also wasn't Brooklyn, right? There's one very small, tiny piece of Brooklyn. So eventually, I would make those runs a little longer and a little longer, right? So then I started, going to the waterfront, and then I decided, all right, well, that's to the west of me. I wonder what's to the east. And then I would slowly make my ways east to Williamsburg. Go to the waterfront to the west, and then
Right.
go to the east, Williamsburg, and then back home. And so that whole journey was when I worked up to it was 7 miles. And so I would continue in this fashion, like every week, adding a little bit more, and um, it eventually came to me, right? Like I did it mainly as a means to like explore the neighborhood, clear my mind, and like just think about things, right? And I like that, and it was a great way to do these things, right? There's no noise, there's no um, things to distract you, right? You're totally on your own, and you're totally in your own headspace, and like you're seeing what's all around you. And then it was in that journey, it's like somewhere I can't tell you when, but like so it was sometime doing that I figured, you know what? I think I'd worked my way up to that point was like 13 miles, right? I unofficially done a half marathon, and I was really super proud of myself because I'm like,
That's
oh my
awesome.
God, 13,
Yeah.
13 miles. This is so cool.
Uh-huh.
Or 13-1. And like, I was super like stoked, and I was really impressed with myself about it. And then it was somewhere in that time period, I'd say, I don't know, closer to towards the end of 2013, where I thought, you know what? I might actually be able to run the marathon. Like it was something I never thought. I kind of threw that idea out of my head a very long time ago. Because you know, I never ran the right way. And I would run for 5 miles, right? And we're talking, like 2006, seven area. I would run for 5 miles, and then I'd have this pain in the back of my knee, like my IT man, and it always hit like in the 5 mile range. And then I just convinced myself from that point on that I was biomechanically unable to go that distance, right? I just accepted it. I'm like, okay, well, that sucks. I keep having this pain. I don't know why. I'm young and it happens. And like, what's going on? And then
Right.
I just convinced myself that, okay, maybe you just have to be certain body type, certain weight, height, I don't know, to run like past 5 miles. And that's fine. Like I don't fit that prototype, that physical structure, and that's fine. Like I'm totally okay with that. And
Mhm.
then it wasn't until I ran the 13 miles that I realized, wait a minute, I'm past 5 miles. This is cool. This is really cool. And then I thought, all right, I could maybe I could actually do the marathon. Um, and I'd known that my brother had so he passed in 2012, and he was training for his first marathon. He never got a chance to run it. And then I thought, in doing that running around Brooklyn and exploring the neighborhood and slowly working my way up to these distances that I thought I never could run, somewhere in that process, the idea came in my mind that I might actually be able to run the marathon. That would be cool, right? And then if I did do it, I should do it for David. And that became the whole motivation. So like after I figured I can run the 13.1, I started training for 26.2.
Right.
And you know, like everything takes work, right? You have to have a goal. You need a determination. You've got to have some kind of plan, right? And I did that, and so over time, and it wasn't right away. It wasn't 1, 2, 3. I like chosen the marathon that I wanted to run, and it was the New York City Marathon. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as signing up for it.
Right.
there's,
Right.
there's a process, and there's like many different ways you can get into it. Um, the easiest way, if you live in New York City or the tri-state area, is to do what's called their 9+1 program, where you sign up for 9 races, sign up, run, and complete those 9 races, and you volunteer for one. Like you take a volunteer shift at any one of their races, and and that guarantees you entry, right? Like, so now you can apply for the marathon for the following year. And so it's not, it's not, again, it's not a really easy thing because you have to run those races, volunteer for it the year before to gain entry the year after, right? So you're still waiting at least a year to run that marathon, and
Yeah.
so
That's a
it
big time
really
commitment, right?
it's a long time.
Yeah.
So I thought, and, you know, like I did the math, I worked out the timelines. I'm like, this is wow, this is crazy. The earliest I could actually run the marathon if I start now, which was the end of 2013. The earliest I could possibly run it is November 2015. That seems so far away.
Right.
But so I did it. I was patient with it, and like I'd worked myself up, you know, to that distance. And in 2015 November, I ran it, and that was the best race like that I had ever run. Right, it had meaning to it. It was emotional. Right, crossed the line. It was my marathon PR for a long time. Because I put so much into it, and my legs felt totally broken afterwards. I mean, not totally broken, but like it hurt to walk.
Right.
and and after you finish the New York City Marathon, if you'd ever run it, it's like you have to walk for a long time until
Yeah.
you exit the park. So it's not like you cross the line and it's like, okay, bye guys, I'll see you later. You have to walk like a quarter mile just to get to the exit to leave the park. And so I did that. And then I sat on the curb and I just like try to take it all in, right? And then I asked someone to take my photo, just to commemorate it. And that's the photo like that I like to use, that I like to refer to when I talk about finishing my first marathon.
Yeah.
And then to add insult to injury, it doesn't stop there. So I thought like my legs really hurt, right? You put a big effort, when you put a large effort like that, that's gonna happen, right? But then I figure, okay, I'm not going to the subway, like, ouch, it hurts to walk. I'm just grabbing a cab, or an Uber.
Right.
No, you can't. The streets are so packed with people and runners like leaving the race that
Yeah.
you can't simply leave. You can't leave. You can't walk to the subway. The subway's a few blocks away, a few avenue blocks away, which is very long.
Right.
And like to even get to a street where there's like cabs or like a corner where you can hail an Uber, that's another at least quarter mile away. And so
Right.
I remember leaving that just like bit like zombie walking, right? And
Right.
they give you this poncho, which is a really nice quality poncho. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst part of the marathon. It's actually leaving the marathon. But I
Those are
didn't
some
care.
of,
I was
you
on
know,
cloud
those are
nine.
some of the greatest pictures online and on the news when they show the runners at the end. They've got like the shuffle.
You almost have to train for it, right? Like mentally, you have to train for, all right, gonna run the marathon. Physically, that's taxing, and like if I put a big enough effort, it's gonna hurt. But
Right.
man, I gotta get ready for that post like finish line walk.
That's awesome. So you ran the New York City Marathon, and then where was the jump from marathon to ultra? When did that happen?
So so there's the New York City Marathon, right? Um, 2 weeks after the marathon, there's something on the calendar called the like New York Road Runners 60K, right? And I remember thinking at the time, I was very happy and proud of myself that I ran the marathon. I did it for David, and like like many running things, when you get to a distance and you actually complete it, you start
Yeah.
wondering, like you're like, oh man, all right, cool. This this running thing is really cool. What's on the calendar? Like what's next? People are always asking themselves what's next, right? Not just me. Anyone else who takes on any kind of challenge, any kind of physical challenge, will ask themselves what's next, right? It's the logical next step, right? Um, and so I did the same thing, and I logged into New York Roadrunners, and I go to the calendar, expecting like the next thing was going to be a 10K or a 5K in Central Park, and like something along those lines, right? I saw that the very next race was something called the 60K, and I thought to myself, what on earth? 37.2 miles? What is that?
Yeah.
Like, so first of all, I saw that the headline was 60K, right? And I'm like, no, that can't be. That's like a team event. That's a relay event, right? And so I click on it, expecting like it's like forming in my head. I see the headline is New York Runner 60K. I automatically assume, oh my God, that has to be a relay race. That's gonna be really fun. Like maybe I can run it with this friend or this friend, and at the same, while all of this is going on, I'm clicking on it, right? And then I'm reading the description, and it's not a relay race. it's a single participant race. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Who's gonna run 60? Who's gonna run 37 miles? It's crazy distance. And so like it just boggled my mind that existed, right? And so then I thought next thing was, all right, well, it's actually a single participant race. Where is it? And it was all in Central Park. So that's where it still is. But at the time I thought 37 miles of Central Park is 9 loops of like Central Park's larger inner loop, like roughly 4 miles, and you had to do that 9 times. And I thought, I can't. That sounds mind numbing. I can't imagine that anyone would want to do that. And so I actually ignored it. Right? I thought, no, that's crazy. I don't know not for me. Like if it was 37 miles where you started on one end of the island and then you made your ways to another end of a different island, that's a destination type thing. It's a journey, and I'm like, I would rather do that. And then I'm like, no, I'm not doing loops. Like the one thing I will not do is loops of Central Park. One loop is enough. Harlem Hill crushes you, right? And put everything in perspective. Harlem Hill is like a tiny little thing.
Right.
But like when you're first training and you're first racing and you're signing up for these races and you're running them, you hit Harlem Hill in Central Park, it feels like a mountain. And I thought, I'm not running that thing 9 times. That's insanity. But it nags at you, right? And it wasn't long. It wasn't like I thought about it for the week, and like the next day I was like, oh, I'm curious. No, it was like literally half hour later. So I closed the browser. I click. I'm like, no, not for me. And I get back to work, right? Because I was at work, and this is actually the Monday after the marathon. I'm still on cloud 9, right? And I like I see the 60K, and I think to myself, that's not for me. That's for crazies. No. Literally half hour later, I'm like, yeah, but what if, right? And then I start like researching it more and then reading race reports of people who actually did it. And for the people who completed it and wrote about it and posted it online, it sounded like a battle, like a journey, like such a learning experience. It sounded something like that was really, really big. So like, put the marathon here, and their version of this account was like up here. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do that.
Right.
That sounds, oh my God, this person had such a difficult time and they look faster than me already. I don't know if I want to do that. And then I kept thinking about it. It didn't leave my mind. And I finally signed up for it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do this thing, right? I have to do this.
Right.
I signed up for it. It was 2 weeks after the marathon, and I was scared. I was terrified. I remember thinking at the time, like, this is, and then I started looking up in like reading those race reports. I found terms like ultra running, ultra marathons, ultra runners, and I thought, wow, I didn't know that world existed. And I'm like, that's really intriguing that people would want to run those distances. I thought the marathon was the top. Like I thought that was it. You reached that level and you did it, and that wasn't the case. And so then I'm really nervous, right? Because I didn't fit any of the stereotypical shape of a runner right, in my mind wasn't like my body type. And I'm thinking, man, but I don't know if I can do it. Like, again, that question of like whether or not I was biomechanically able to do this
Right.
stuck out, right? Because the person who wrote the race report, they have photos, and like during the race, like post race, and I'm looking at that person's physical
Yeah.
appearance, and like they have the body of a runner. Then they're saying how difficult this is. I'm like, and what am I putting my like getting myself into?
Right.
Um, and I was scared. And I thought, like, I don't know anyone who had run at that point. I didn't know anyone who ran an ultra marathon. No one in my family certainly who had run these distances before. And I thought, but what if I did this? I'd be the first one, like in my family to
Yeah.
run this type of distance, right?
Right.
Like that would be
Right.
cool. And I stressed over it, and I did more research on ultra marathons for a 37-mile race than you could possibly believe. Different scenarios. No, seriously, like I had a spreadsheet and everything,
Oh
like
yeah.
calorie intake, like pace charts on base case, bull case, bear case scenario, like worst case scenario, like all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, no, we're gonna slam this thing, we're gonna get it. And and I did so much research on that one race, right? In retrospect, it's 37 miles.
Right.
We're gonna get this thing. And I had drop bags like you wouldn't believe, and like Gatorade. So I thought my main fuel source, because I knew nothing
Yeah.
about proper fueling, like nothing at all. The one thing that I took away from researching like ultra running, right, in general, the one takeaway that I took that was consistent throughout is that there is no consistency in it. So everyone's race reports were totally different.
Yeah.
Everyone had a different plan on nutrition, a different plan on pace execution, a different plan on like how you're to approach the hills, and like how, when you're supposed to save your legs for running faster. Everyone had a different approach, but the end result was success. And I was so confused because I'm like, I don't understand. This person is saying, take electrolytes, like I don't know, like an electrolyte pill once every hour. And this next person is saying, no, you have to be more aggressive and upfront about that and take like 3 before this. And I'm like, I don't understand. This is so
Yeah.
confusing. What do I do? Right. And I didn't even know what an electrolyte pill was. So,
Right.
so like I didn't know what it was. And so like I relied on Gatorade, because I'm like, that's what athletes drink, is Gatorade.
Right. Right.
And then it came the day before the race, and I had my drop bags, and like lots of drop bags, a change of shoes, like everything, right? And I was ready the night before. I write this post on, like, oh my God, here it is. This is my first foray into ultra running. Fingers crossed, like I actually make it. And
Right.
and the Saturday came. It was freezing cold because it was 2 weeks after the marathon, and like for some reason it was just like really really cold. And every single time I've run that race from that point on, it's been really cold. When in reality, it's mid-November, right? But so then the morning of it comes, and this is still when the New York City, the New York Roadrunners headquarters was on Fifth Avenue, and I go to Fifth Avenue to pick up the bib, and like the race shirt, and the one thing I noticed was you didn't have these large crowds that you usually do for the 5Ks, the 10Ks, and the marathons, right? Like at all. There was maybe like 140 people total. And I wasn't used to that. I was used to these large events where you had hundreds or thousands of people running these races, right?
Right.
I expected there's going to be like corrals, like there normally is, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like,
Right.
people are going to be lined up, and people are going to be running this crazy 9 laps of Central Park. That wasn't the case at all. It was like 100, 130, 140 people. I'm looking around like, did I have the wrong date? Like, where is everyone? I don't understand. And I didn't understand then. I know it now. Like it's as you increase in distance, you have, that's just the fewer number of people will sign
Right.
up for those distances. I get
Right.
that now. I didn't get it then. I'm like, no, you put New York Roadrunner brand on a race, and like thousands of people will show, hands down.
Right.
That's not the case. So I start running, and the one thing that stuck in my mind was like, temper your pace. Don't run fast. Don't run fast, right? I'm like, 10-minute pace, 10-minute pace. That's one thing stuck in my mind. Of course, if you're not used to running a 10 or 11-minute pace, right? Like if you're not accustomed to it, because in your training, all you ever known was like running fast.
Sure.
I ran 10 minutes for the first mile. And then I like, that competitive streak comes on because there are other runners in the race. And I thought,
Right.
wait, no, that person's running fast. I'm gonna run fast too. And so like, 10 minutes became 9, became 8. And I didn't even realize I'm just
Yeah.
chasing the next person.
Right.
When you're not supposed to be running another person's race in ultra running, you have to run your own race, go at your own pace. And I'm chasing, right? So now I don't know why, but I'm chasing. And I get through 2 laps, or maybe like 3 laps. Everything felt great. And I'm like, and like all the preparation I did, all the pace calculations, and like that Excel
Yeah.
sheet that had all this stuff on it just went out the window because I forgot it all. I'm following that guy. He knows what he's doing. He's having a great time. And then when it started lap 4, nah, he went off. He continued at his pace that he's used to, and my legs were killing me. And I thought, oh my God, I've got 6 more laps of this.
Right.
What am I doing? Um, it was a long day, to say the least. But I eventually crossed the line.
And you finish it. And to put this in perspective, this is only 5 years ago, right? You said
Yeah,
2015,
yeah.
and only 3 years from the start of the Game of Hundos.
It was, yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. So those 3 years
So
go by. Where do we jump into 100-mile races?
it was so after that race, you know, I thought that the marathon, I felt my legs felt broken after the marathon. They really felt broken after the 37 miler, like the 60K. Like when I tell you my legs were aching, I had a headache when I came home. And the next day, Sunday, I felt like terrible, right? Like if you told me to sign up for another race, I would have said, absolutely not. That was insane. I'm never going to do that again. And in retrospect, I didn't fuel properly, like didn't have enough hydration. I went out too fast. So there's a lot of different reasons why I felt that way the next day, but I didn't understand that. All I knew at the time was I feel like crap. Why do people want to run this distance? It seems
Yeah.
really foolish. I don't want to do it again. And then it doesn't take long before gears start moving
Oh
in
yeah.
your head because we have short memories, right? Like
Right.
we're emotional animals, right? Human beings are, and we have short memories, whether selectively or not. You know, the memory of an activity that had an intense pain associated with it is shorter than the feeling of that you had when you completed it, right? Because that feeling of euphoria, I think, is greater and it stays with you longer than the
Right.
feeling of like, this hurts. That was the absolute worst I felt in my life, right? Euphoria, intense pain. Euphoria, intense pain. Euphoria is going to win, right? And you have this nice, and because we commemorate it with this physical medal, it looks badass, right? It's like,
Right.
oh my God, that medal is really cool. It's something that you could wear. It's like, or you could hang it up on your windowsill, whatever it is. So that feeling of euphoria will always trump the
Yeah.
worst pain because it's always in your face. Like there's a physical way, there's a physical something to commemorate it. So of course the day after, I felt like I'd never run anything over a marathon again. I was even questioning whether I'd run a marathon again because I'm like, no, that hurt. Ouch. Like I can barely walk today. Why does anyone want to do this? And of course, like a week goes by and I'm looking at the medal on the window, so I'm like, that was pretty badass. That was
Oh
cool.
yeah.
So it wasn't even the end of the year, and I know through my research of like how I should run the 37 miler. I eventually found out there are things like 50 milers and 100 milers, and I looked at the 100 at the time. I looked at the 100 miler as something that was way beyond my comprehension. I couldn't understand people staying awake through the night, breaking night, and like continuing into the next day. Couldn't understand it. Had no way um to like associate with it, and like relate. I couldn't. It was just like it was above and beyond. And I read accounts of people hallucinating, and that scares me because I don't like to hallucinate. I don't want to hallucinate, especially when I'm
Right.
by myself in the middle of like a dark towpath, right? So like,
Yeah.
or woods. Who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. But I was curious what was above the 37, right? And I knew it was 50 milers. So the first thing I did after I had that week of telling myself I'm never going to run these distances again, they hurt too much,
Right.
was go back online and check out, okay, well, the next step is a 50 miler. Where's the next 50? And I was hoping, like expecting actually, for there to be a 50 miler in New York, right? Or I mean, New York tri-state area, like where I live, right? And at the time there wasn't. The closest 50 miler was in a place called Lockport, and that I'd never heard of, never been to, Lockport, New York, and it was the Beast of Burden 50 miler, right? They also have 100, but I was no way I was going to do that.
Right.
But I saw the 50 miler as something that was possible, and the next date for it was in January, and I thought, which was a month away at the time, was a month away, and I thought, okay, and I told, now keep in mind, intense pain and euphoria. Intense pain I forgot about. That was done. That was last week's problem.
This timeline is amazing. This timeline marathon. I mean, in the span of a couple months.
Well, I mean, we always. I think that's humans are wired that way,
Totally.
where they want to, when they push, when they set their minds on a goal and they accomplish it. There's, there are physical, like almost chemical. There's a chemical connection. So when you actually have these feelings of euphoria, you're chemically connected to that event, right? And so your brain remembers it in a different way. When you like see visuals of that event, of the finish line, it brings it back, right? So like it comes back, right? It's like how smell like brings up memories. Like
Totally.
Looking at those medals or those photos will like bring up the same feelings of success and victory and like things like that. Now it's different in from person to person, right? Some people will have that feeling of like, that was great, I want to do more, and they will like and know that they want to do more, but like they'll take a little slower pace with it, right? And some people just know that, I did X distance, and I'm comfortable with it, like that is a distance that I'm totally fine with and I'm comfortable with that. So yeah, it was a little fast.
It's great. And I love the foreshadowing it kind of gives of what's coming around the corner, right?
So the 50 comes, right? I signed up for it. That's the very first step of getting yourself in trouble, is signing up for something.
Sure.
And so like I did that and I signed up for it, and I thought it was a month away, and okay, I can't turn away now. I already signed up for it. And so here we go. I'm like getting nervous and worried about it and wondering, how on earth am I going to prepare for this thing? And then all that work and research that I did for the 37, like the 60K, again, out the window. Like somehow I forgot about it. I have a spreadsheet, I did a lot of work on it, and then I forgot. I don't know where it went or what happened to it, because I started a new plan, and that plan was to finish the 50 miler. And here we go. It like automatically started from scratch, and like, okay, how do we get this thing done? And I'm reading everyone who shared their race reports. I'm reading their accounts of it. And then, of course, the only consistent thing was that there was nothing consistent at all. And everyone had, even more varying accounts of how their version of success was, because in a 50 miler, you have to have drop bags at this point, and it's like, oh my gosh. I signed up for that race, and I prepared for it as best as I could, but I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. So that was a winter race. It was in January in Lockport, and Lockport, New York is actually, it's freezing. It's a lot, because it's right along the Erie Canal, right by the Great Lakes. They get lake effect snow. It snows more frequently there than it does like in the surrounding areas, and it just gets colder. And so I prepared for it the best way that I knew how, and that turned out to be like insufficient during the race itself, because it got to the halfway point and I was like in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
I was borderline hypothermic because I didn't have enough layers, and the layers I had were like the nice dry and warm clothes were at a different location, because I'd miscalculated how long it was going to take to get there. Right, you have snow on the trail, and like your 10-minute pace estimates all of a sudden became 12, and I didn't realize that when you're running, even if you're running at a 12-minute pace and you have all your clothes on, and it's like 15 degrees outside. When you're running, you're still sweating and you're like wet underneath. And when you slow down, you, the first like cold wind chill that
Yeah.
comes your way will pierce through your body,
Right.
and it will freeze your bones like you've never felt before. And so
Yeah.
that's what happened to me. And so I wasn't moving like the pace I thought I should be moving, the pace that I estimated, right? Even in my worst case scenario, I don't know what happened. And so like, yeah, I was moving slower than in my worst case scenario. And the cold was just like piercing me. And I get to the aid station at mile 25, and I sat down, and my goal was to you sit down, get some food, and go right back out. Right, like I was like, nope, gotta keep moving, can't stop. But I'm like, but I was in a dangerous uh, position because I was still wet from the sweat. But now I'm in a tent that's very warm, and they've got these heaters, like these torch heaters, that are very comfortable, and it's 70 degrees like in the tent, right? But
Yeah.
it's 15 degrees outside, and I'm still wet from sweat, right? So like what I don't realize is that the minute I go outside, and if I continue running at like not the pace that I wanted to, I'm going to be in very big trouble, right? I didn't know that. I didn't realize all that, and I'm like, all right, good to go. And I'm like getting up to get back outside, and this guy stops me, right? He's one of the volunteers. He's like, um, hey, what's going on? Like how you doing? How you feeling? And I'm like, oh no, I'm fine. I'm just gonna go. Gonna go straight out because I have to keep moving and keep the body good core temperature up. And he's like, because he saw me when I came in, right? And
Right.
like I'm like all wet inside, and he's like, uh, and he's like, you're like your teeth are like shaking, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're cold, and like he's like, your face is so pale, like you don't, are you okay? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm fine. And he's like, I think you should stay here and warm up. And I'm like, no, I got to get back outside because like I'm still like my clothes are wet, and I have to keep moving to keep the core temperature up. And he's like, I don't think that's a good idea. So his name was Dwight, right? And and he actually, so he's like, and then when he mentioned that, then I started feeling like really, really cold, right? And like hypothermia, like borderline hypothermia, right? Well, it's like a real thing. And he's like, no, we got to get you into some dry clothes. You can't leave out here like this. What, like, where's your clothes? And I'm like, well, my clothes are 12 and a half miles at the other aid station. And he's like, oh man, okay. You got to take your clothes off. and and here I am in a tent, right? I don't know anyone there. I went there by myself to finish this
Right.
race
Right.
and like do the race. I don't know anyone there. And all of a sudden, I'm stripping down to my underwear, right, in a tent filled with other people, so that they could dry my clothes in front of the space heaters,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
and and Dwight's coming over. He's putting like a blanket over me, and like he's giving me all this hot soup and stuff like that. I was in that tent for almost an hour, and I didn't realize like how dangerous that situation would have been had I not stopped there to do those things.
Right.
And if I actually went back out like on my own, and into the cold, like still wet and like not having enough calories in me, because really when I got to that aid station, I was like focused on in and out,
Right.
and I didn't eat enough. And so like I didn't realize that at the time. I realize it now. And so like that really saved me. And so like it turned my race around. Right. So like once my clothes were like dry, semi-dry, because you can't really get them totally dry in that time. Put it back on. I felt a lot warmer with calories in, and I went right back outside, and finished the 50 miles. So that was a tough 50. So the temperature made it tough. It's very cold. And the physical activity made it tough, right? Because it was still 50 miles and still time on your feet, and like there was a lot of things associated with it. And when I got to mile 48, like at the time, I was doing it for my brother, right? Like because around that time, any race, like the races that I ran, I was inspired by my brother, right? Because like it was close to me, and it was special to me, and it meant something to me. And I started tearing up at mile 48 because because I realized, oh my God, I'm going to do this thing, like finish a 50.
Right.
Um, And so Beast of Burden is kind of it's one of those races that it's like a cruel joke in a sense, because when you get to when you get to the 2 miles from the finish, you could actually see the finish line right across the Erie Canal. And so
Okay.
you can hear people celebrating, and you can see them, but you're still 2 miles away. Like, you still have to go like a mile down, and you have to cross over a bridge and then come back a mile to the finish line. But you could see all this action when
Yeah.
you're 2 miles away. So like, I saw this action, and like realizing like, oh my God, all I need to do is make it there, right?
Right.
And but like, I got emotional, and I knew that I was there. That's something that I was running for my brother. I was inspired by David, and I finished it, and I was so happy with it. I was extremely happy with that one.
This is awesome. I love how it's so fresh still. I mean, it feels like you ran the race last weekend with all the details. So, and it is, I think getting this backstory is important because it really sets the stage for, first of all, again, this is only a few years ago. This is only a couple years before you started the Game of Hundos. So, it really is like an origin story. But
Yeah.
let's jump into the Game of Hundos because I want to make sure we have, plenty of time to chat about it. Bring us up to speed with how that started. And I mean, it's going to be hard to sum up, 100 weeks, but let's at least make the attempt,
Yeah.
diving into the Game of Hundos.
So it never started out that way at all. It started in 2017. So if you're looking at the timeline, you have that 60K, and
Mhm.
then, well, the marathon. You have the marathon, and then the 60K, and then the 50 miler, and then later that year, my first 100. And then after, in 2017, I had this idea that I wanted to run 200 milers back to back. Like, that's just an arbitrary physical challenge that I wanted to like do myself. Right.
Right.
I thought, like, I knew how hard it was to run 100, like, and like, I still appreciate how difficult it is. It is by no means easy.
Yeah.
That's the number one misconception I get, is that, oh my God, hundreds must be easy for you now. No, they're not. They are
Yeah.
difficult. They should be taken seriously. Every
Yeah.
race has its own set of challenges, and you have to appreciate that before you actually do the race. But anyway, back then, in 2017, I wanted to do a back-to-back. So finish a 100 miler on the first weekend, and then have that 5 days recovery, and then start the next 100 and finish it on the following weekend.
Right.
And I tried twice in 2017, and I failed both times. Right, like, I would finish the first race, and then run the second race the following weekend, and then find some reason, wasn't physical. It was always mental, right, to quit. And the first time I quit the back to back was because I made it to the aid station at mile 55. This is actually Eastern States
Yeah.
2017.
Uh-huh.
Made it to the mile 55, was halfway house, an aid station called Halfway House. Um, and I had 5 minutes to get out of that aid station. And I'd already known that getting up to that point, getting up to that aid station, I was struggling with sleep. Like, I was falling, I was sleepwalking, and I was just having a hard struggling to stay awake, and it wasn't even that late. It was 11 p.m. But I got to Halfway House, and I thought, like, the volunteers are already asking me, hey, you got to make a decision. Are you going, or are you calling it? And I thought, like, and I'm getting like stressed out, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, well, I got all these things I still have to do. I have to go to my drop bag, I have to get food. I'm like, and then I'm thinking irrationally, right? Like, I started thinking, if I get on the trail, and I make my way to the next aid station, and I don't make it by that aid station's cutoff time, whatever it was, I don't remember what it was. If I don't do that, then will they pack up their bags and leave, and potentially leave me stranded out there? Like, so that's where my mind was at the time. And
Right.
and I felt like I can't take that risk. Can't be stranded out there. I have no cell phone reception. There's no signal. There's nothing. Like, I'd be on my own. I'd be in trouble. And so I took that easy out, right? Like, I was like, I have to call it. Like, uh, and the biggest regret, it wasn't physical. The biggest regret was, of course, they drive you back to the start finish area. I get in my car, change change my clothes, and then take a nap. Right, wake up 4 hours later, and then I start, like, you just start regretting the decision that you just made. right? Because like, well, no, I'm fine physically. Why didn't I just push on, right? And so that regret was there. It was like, and so then I thought, I got to try it again. Like I want to try this again. And it didn't happen right away because it takes running hundreds. It's like it's a logistical challenge. So even then, it was a logistical challenge. It has to work with my work schedule, like the race itself.
Yeah.
I have to like the time constraints for the race have to be such that I could make it there. You know,
Right.
leaving on a Friday evening from Manhattan, and then make it back to work Monday morning without being late, right? And so like those constraints, like they don't not very easy to come up with. So the first time I tried the back to back was in August, and the second time I had the opportunity to try it again was in December. So like this is months away, right? And so it wasn't because like I was just like dragging my feet. It was I had to find the right opportunity.
Right.
Um, and so it happened again. And like I finished the first race and I DNF'd the second race. And it was like so frustrating because it was another situation of that, right? Except in that instance, I started getting cold in the overnight, and I didn't want to like. I started thinking, creating excuses, right? Like, oh my god, what if I like freeze? What if I go back out and I freeze, right? That would suck. And then I had plenty of time, and I thought, man, I can't take that chance. I'm like,
Yeah.
what chance? I didn't even try, right? Like I didn't even try to go back out there and like give it a good effort. Like I automatically thought like, oh my god, I'm gonna freeze. That's it.
Yeah.
Can't do it. And and then I regretted it, right? Like I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, the next day I'm like, this is why did I do that again? So that was in 2017, tried twice and I failed twice. And then in 2018, I thought, okay, I want to do it again. Like this is something, this goal that I had that I wanted to finish, but like it's the same deal. It's logistically, it's hard to find. It's challenging, I should say. It's challenging to find races, especially hundreds, that are back to back where you could actually schedule it that works with your life schedule, your work schedule, like everything else, right? And so that opportunity came about in November 2018, and the first race was the Chattanooga 100,
Mhm.
and that was like, man, that race, it rained for like more than a day, over a day of that time. It was a mud fest, and it was awful.
Yeah.
And it had so much climb to it. And like a genius, I wore road shoes because why wear trail shoes to a trail race, right? Like, and so the experience itself was very challenging, but I crossed the line. And then and then I saw that the next weekend was a race that I could get to that actually worked in my schedule, and I thought to myself, oh my god, this is the time to execute. I got to do it. Like I want
Right.
to try it again. And the next weekend was Daytona 100, and I'm familiar with that race. I'd run it already 2 years like in a row, and I
Mhm.
thought, all right, I already got Chattanooga. Daytona 100 is a race whose execution I'm familiar with. I've done it 2 years in a row, and I'm very confident that I could finish this one. And
Yeah.
so I ran it, right, and I start running, and like, somewhere in the first mile, I run into my friend Kevin Sass, right, and and like we start right. He's a much faster runner than I am, and but I thought I hadn't seen him in a long time, and like I told him up front, like, hey man, you're much faster than I am, and this is my second week like running. This is my second 100 in a back-to-back attempt.
Mhm.
Don't let me hold you back. If you feel fast for whatever reason, go.
Right.
Like honestly, I won't take offense to it. Just like run your own race, but it's great to talk to you and catch up.
Right.
And so, and he knew that, he understood, and he's like, all right, great, like we'll just run for as long as we can, and then I'll take off when I take off. And it's like, oh, awesome. And so they were running, and we're talking a mile, mile goes by, 2 miles, 10 miles go by, 20 miles go by. We're still together, right? We're running
Yeah.
at a 10 minute, 10 minute pace, and I
Wow.
didn't expect that I would be doing that, but that's what we're doing. And and then 30 miles go by, 40 miles, and then we kind of make it like, all right, let's see if we can get to the halfway point. Let's,
Right.
like in like 10 hours. So we just our goal was, all right, let's see if we get to the halfway point in 10 hours. And and Kevin is saying, I'll probably have to take off then. And I'm like, totally fine, man.
Right. Right.
Again, I won't take offense. Like I love this conversation that we're having, but I know you got to run. You're a lot faster. I know you got to run your race. Just go when you need to. We get to the halfway point in 10 hours and 15 minutes, right? So like pretty much on target. But
Uh-huh.
I felt fine, and I love the conversation, right? And again, so this will be like a central theme. This is what I love about the sport, is that you create these friendships. You have these conversations, you get these different worldviews, right? This is all part of ultra running that you not, I wouldn't say you only get it in the sport. It's a big benefit of like participating in the sport is that you have the opportunity to do those things. So, but back to the story, we start running 60 miles, 70 miles. I'm getting a little tired, right? Like mile 75 area. And I started doing like the sleepwalking thing, right? And I thought Kevin was out. I thought at that point, once it started hitting, I thought he's gonna go because it was we hit mile 75 in 16 hours, and I started doing like one of these things, like, oh man, this is like I'm having a tough time staying awake. And I said, Kevin, I like, and he's ahead of me, right? Like he's walking ahead. I'm like, Kevin, I don't know, man. If you gotta go, go. I have plenty of time to finish this.
Yeah.
But like I can't stay awake. And he was like, he told me, he was like, no, come on, we're going. We're like, let's stay awake, man. And he's trying to keep me awake. And that like sleepiness spell only lasted for 20 minutes. Yeah. Because after that point, he stood with me. He was awesome enough to stay with me. And we hit my lady, and I was fine. And like 85, we started running again. So, which was insane. And then like we're running this in now, because now we have thoughts. My goal was for that race was 28 hours, right? And I told, that's another thing. In the beginning, I told him up front it's 28 hours. Yeah. And he told me his goal was sub 24, right? And I was like, all right, immediately we're ready off, because I don't want to do a sub 24. Yeah. So whenever you have to go, just go. And at that point, we were on pace for a 22-hour race. And it was like insane. And we started running, and we're passing people. We're passing people. Mile 85, we're running, and in like a 9-10 minute pacing. And it's like, where is this coming from? And actually PR'd. We both PR'd. Actually, we stood together the entire race. We crossed the line. We passed a bunch of people. And I could not believe, right? Yeah. That performance, that execution. So of course I'm on cloud 9 because I just PR'd my 100-mile time in a back-to-back, in a second, like 100 in a back-to-back attempt. Like how did that happen? I don't know how that happened. And I was on cloud 9. So I get to work, right? And that Monday morning, and I started thinking, like, I can't believe that was a physical performance that I didn't think I was capable of, and all of a sudden it happened. Holy smokes. I wonder if a triple is possible. And so that's how it happened. It rolled into like 3, and then 4, and then 5. And then once I got to 5, I thought, like, this is insane. Yeah. Let's see if we can get to 10, right? Let's see if we can get like 10. Like, how awesome would that be to do 10 hundreds in a row? I never thought I could do 2, and all of a sudden I'm on 5. And then somewhere like in 6 and 7, the cumulative sleep deficit started to catch up to me. And like, I'd feel like just drained in the middle of the work week, and I'd be at my desk at work. Even though I'd gotten sleep the night before, during the work week, just falling asleep like this. And like, oh my God, this is, I can't, if I make it to, I hope I can make it to 10. This is very hard. And I'd be really grateful if I made it to 10. And then this amazing thing happened. So it was hard. It was tough because my body was trying to adjust to this, like I'm telling it every week, hey, by the way, we're not going to get sleep for a night and a half. Yeah. So just get used to it, and still give me performance. Thanks. My body's getting adjusted to that. But this amazing thing happened. I got to 10, right? And I was really like excited and happy about it. And then it went away. That sleep, like that whole like this during the work week went away. And I didn't change anything with my sleep schedule. I still, was losing on average a night and a half of sleep every week. My body just got used to this load that I introduced to it, right? And these demands that I had for it. And that's what amazes me in this physical like attempt, right? Is that when you try to do these things that you didn't know that you were capable of, your body has this amazing like ability to adapt. Yeah. And it adapts in amazing ways. So I'm certainly not condoning or advising that people should lose a night, 2 nights of sleep every week. But I am saying that if you found yourself in that position where you had to do it, you totally can. And that just that was so interesting to me. And I thought, oh my God, I want to see like what we're capable of, right? Like, what am I capable of? And so I continued like past 10, I went to 11, 12, 13, and I was still taking it on a week by week basis. There was still no end point, right? There was no end point. but it was after 10 that I started looking up records, because people came back and said, hey, is this like the most anyone's run hundreds before? And honestly, I didn't know.
Right.
And then like, and I'm answering the question like, I don't know, honestly, I don't know, is there a record for this? And so like I look it up, and there was, and I thought, why not try to keep going and
Yeah.
see what we can do with this. And so that's what we did. And so it was like a week by week. I took it on a week by week basis from that point. And I thought, okay, if I have to stop at any one time, totally fine. But I want to see how far we can go. And then here, like, so I continued the rest of the year. And then I make it to 2020. I'm 58 weeks in at that point. At the end of 2019, like, people had sort of expected that that's where I would stop, because it's a natural endpoint to it, right? Like, calendar year should be a natural endpoint to like these things. And I made the decision while I was running number 58 in Arizona, is a across the years 40-hour race. And I thought, okay, well, I have this post already made
Yeah.
for for what the next 42 weeks would look like. All of the races like that would be in that, because I'd done the work. It took weeks, but I had done the work for what races like would be the next 42. But I was waiting for the end of like across the years before I made that decision, because I wanted to see where like my headspace was. I wanted to see if I finished 2019, did I still have the same feelings for the project that I did when I started. So I didn't want to commit to something if I didn't have those feelings anymore, right? Because who knows? Like, I might have crossed the finish line and thought, I'm done.
Right.
I'm
Right.
done. Like, all right, whew, I'm glad I didn't post that last week. But I finished the race, and I thought, I'm never gonna have a chance. I'm not gonna have this opportunity in life to take off, like, to commit. I shouldn't say take off, to commit this much time to a project like this. And like, who knows if I will still have the same success factors, right? Like, if I'll still have the same physical capacity. Like, things have lined up in such a way where it's unbelievable to me. And so I got to give it a good effort, right? And so like, I hit post. It was already written. Like, I had this stuff written like a week in advance, and it was like a yay or nay, right? Like, all right, finish
Yeah.
the race. How do you feel? You feel great? You want to do it? Good. Post it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I
Yeah.
did. And it was like, at that point, I'd already committed myself, right? Because once it's out there, like, for 42 more, it's out there, right? I can't go back on it. And so, well, I mean, you can, but I didn't want to. I don't want to do
Right.
that. So it was out there, 42, and I'm like, well, let's do it. Gotta do it, right? And so my goal at that point, at the start of or end of 21 or start of 2020, however you want to look at it, was 100 hundreds, and it was official. I made it official. I put it out there. We were a go, right? 3 months into the year,
Yeah. We know
we're
what's
at
coming.
69. We're at 69. Things are going great. Like, I running the races, I'm finishing the races, and I had these sub goals, right? To like, I at that point I had gotten confident in my
Yeah.
execution, where I thought, all right, let's do the 100 and 100, but let's also take care of other things like 50 states, right? I wanted to do 50 states, because at that point I had a fair bit of states completed, and I thought, well, let's try to get the rest. And I wanted to open it up to other countries, because I thought, how amazing would that be, right? Like, I want to see if we can do this. And so, like, I had these sub goals, and I worked it into the schedule, and like, had all the flights, all the hotels, all the rental cars, all the race registrations, everything taken care of in advance. And that took weeks alone. That took weeks. Week 69 comes, and New York City gets locked down, like, shut down and
Right.
locked down. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on?
Right.
Like, we had already been hearing about the pandemic. We known about it in China. People didn't realize, or like, the media effect of it was such that people didn't expect it to jump the way that it did, and come into the U.S. as quickly and like, as vicious as it did, right? And of course it did. And New York City was why not? Right? The number one hotspot. So New York City gets shut down, and it's like races are getting canceled left and right. Right? Not just the race that I had for that immediate weekend. Races all across my calendar were getting canceled. As far as August and September, and I was just like, it was so demoralizing to receive all of these emails from the race directors and race organizations and say, sorry, we have to cancel, postpone, defer, or like change the date on this, or no longer can hold this race.
Right.
And I'm like, how do I handle that, right? And so it wasn't just the race registration like that I had to take care of. It was the flight cancellations, the hotel cancellations. For the most part, they were fine with refunds or like credits. Others didn't they didn't cater to that. They're like, well, our policy is if you don't go, if you don't make it, like that's it. And I'm like, so I had to eat some costs, associated with that, and that's fine. That's just the risk that comes along with it.
Right.
I didn't like it, but like that's the risk.
Right.
And I was sad that this thing was happening, right? I was sad for our country, the world, that this thing was happening. I was sad for myself because I worked so hard, a year and a half to get to that point, and all of a sudden, an event that you can't possibly predict happens, like a 100-year flood, and it literally was a 100-year flood, except it's a 100-year pandemic, and it's happening now. I'm like, why now? Why are you happening now?
Right.
Can't you happen 6 months from now? Like, come on. But it happened, and I thought like I quit. In my mind, I quit, and I didn't know. I struggled for maybe like a week and a half on what the right thing to do was, because I'm like thinking I could salvage this. What's the best way to salvage this? And I'm like, all right, well, what if we modified the course and started running in the city? Like, and my first thought was across Manhattan Bridge, back and forth 50 times, right? Because that'll get you to 100 miles. And then I thought, like, is that the right thing to do, though? It goes against what the advice is, what the medical experts are saying, and it's sending off the wrong message, right? Because at this point, I'm posting these things and people are following along. And if I'm saying, if the medical experts are saying, hey, stay inside, don't leave, social distance. If they're saying that, and I'm saying, and I'm doing something totally different, where I'm like, I know what they're saying, but I'm going to run 30 hours outside anyway. That's not. I don't want to promote that. I don't want to support that kind of ideology. Like I don't want it out there that this is okay to do. And so I was like, I might have to call this thing. And it sucks because it took a lot of effort to get here. It took a long time to get here. And I don't know, like personally, I don't know if I'll ever have these factors line up in such a way where I can do this again. And like, I'm sitting on my couch, just like watching TV one day, and I look at my living room and I look at the carpets specifically, and I'm thinking, I didn't. So I quit in my mind. I quit. Like I struggled with that decision. I made a decision, and I thought this is the socially responsible thing to do, is to stop here. And if the decision was in my mind, I didn't post it. I didn't say that I was stopping the Game of Hundos there, but it was in my mind. Like that's what I was going to do. And before I said anything about it, I'm watching TV, sad, sad, and a little bit relieved. So this is the weird part. It was such a juxtaposition, right? It was bittersweet because I was bitter for the obvious reasons, but it was sweet because I was tired at that point. Like my body could use the rest. No, seriously, I was like, I'm 68 weeks into a project that takes a huge physical toll, and here I have a get out of jail free card that I could use and not get penalized for it. No one's going to fault me for stopping the Game of Hundos because of a pandemic, right? Because I'm actually locked in my home, right? Not locked, like no one's forcing me to stay there, but like that's the guidance. And I thought this is a get out of jail free card, and maybe, who knows, maybe it's supposed to happen this way. Before I get hurt, before I get injured, this is how it should stop. So it was this bittersweet, but I'm sitting on the couch and like, I didn't work so hard to get here just to stop here. And I started looking around the living room, and I'm like, I'm just curious, what is the perimeter of my carpets, right? I break out this tape measure, and I start measuring, and Netflix is playing in the background, and then I'm like, Okay, well, 40 feet. All right, so this is 40 feet. Uh, I'm just curious, like how many turns would it
Right,
be for 1 mile? Just like 1 mile,
right.
right? It turned out to be 138. And like it's a lot. That's a lot of turns on this carpet. I'm like, and I'm like kind of half talking myself out of it, like, it's gonna be a lot of pressure on my knees, and like, how frequently do I have to rotate
Yeah,
so that I could save my knees, right? And I'm like, that's 138 rotations for 1 mile. I don't, but how many for 100 miles? So I did all the math, right? And it's like 13,800 turns
oh
of
my
this
word.
equipment. I'm like, and you already know that if you have the personality type to like to
Exactly.
do this, like to train and run for 100 miles, right? To push yourself to go those, and you already have this idea to run around your living room carpet, you're gonna run around your living room
It's
carpet. There was
happening.
no turning back. Once the thought was in there, all I had to do was like, all right, what's the track going to be? How do I minimize the effect of noise from my downstairs neighbors? How do I live stream this? Because that was a big component too. Because I wanted to make sure that if I did something like this, I need accountability. One, I need to have it recorded. Like it needs to be documented somehow. Because the last thing I want to do is say that I did this thing,
Right.
and like people have doubt, right? But I also wanted accountability for myself. Like if I'm running around my living room carpet, like I want to make sure that I get it done. So if
Right.
people are watching and they're encouraging me and giving me support, virtually, that they're also witnessing this thing so that I don't quit,
Right.
right? Because if I make like I didn't want to quit or have it again, like have this easy out. So I figured out the technology part was actually a lot trickier than I thought it was going to be. That took a long time, and I had some blips, like trying to figure out how to wire this thing the way that I wanted to, and how to broadcast it
Mhm.
on a continuous basis, how I wanted to do that. And I had a continuous broadcast for 2.5 days. And it worked, but it was not the easiest thing to figure out. But anyway, it worked, and the whole run itself took 60 hours. Very tedious.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it again. I
Yeah.
wouldn't advise it. I don't advise people to do it. I would never do it again.
Yeah.
But it had to be done for the project to continue.
Mhm.
Um, and then I during that time, like I'm running around my living room, I had also ordered a treadmill from Amazon, and I figured, okay, you know, this living room thing is nuts. I could only
Yeah.
do it one time. I'm gonna have to continue the rest with the treadmill. And I honestly thought at the time, didn't know how long the pandemic was gonna last. I thought I was gonna finish the Game of Hundos on a treadmill. Like I'm like, worst case scenario, if we're locked up here for however long, I'm gonna have to do the rest of this project on this treadmill, which sucks, but hey, that's what it is. Um, and then there was also relief in that because I thought that a treadmill 100 is going to be the easiest 100 that you ever do, right? Because all you have to do is keep up with a moving belt. That's
Right.
all you have to do. You're in the comfort of your own home. You have all the Netflix and all the like TV shows and movies that you could ever watch. You're in a
Right.
climate controlled environment. You have access to a fridge. You can get food anytime. You can order out. You have a nice warm bathroom to use. You can take a shower if you wanted to.
Right.
There's a comfortable bed. For all those reasons, I thought that this is going to be a really, really easy thing to do. And it turned out to be one of the hardest things that I ever did. Mentally, I just, after 10 miles on the treadmill, I'm like, why? What did I get myself into?
So the indoor series, well, we'll call it maybe Brooklyn series. That went on for how many weeks until you were able to transition back out to actual events or, self-supported hundreds?
So I did 10 weeks of indoor hundreds, and I mixed them up in a variety of ways. And then on week 11, I went outside to run around my block for 400 turns. Um, and then like around that time, that was Memorial Day weekend, and phase one of lockdown, or I should say the opposite of lockdown, like the New York City economy reopening, phase one was that weekend. And then I decided, okay, well, this is a good opportunity to venture out, right? And so races were still not on at that point.
Mhm.
Um, They had a bunch of virtual races, of course, but like real physical races where you're in person, they, for the foreseeable future, not going down.
Right.
And so like so then I figured, okay, well, these are going to have to be on my own, right?
Yeah.
But I had amazing help from my friends. But these are going to be unofficial, but this is the only way to do it. And so the first one outside of that was in New Jersey. The next three outside of that were in Colorado. It wasn't until the middle of July where physical races started happening again. And they were totally different. They resembled nothing like the races pre-pandemic. And what I mean by that is you had different start waves, you had different rules for like aid stations. So, we take this stuff for granted, or we took it for granted, I should say. Pre-pandemic, when you roll up into an aid station, if you were if you wanted to be in and out, you could do that because the food was out there, in bowls and just like available for anyone to grab and take quickly. That during the pandemic, that was totally different. So now you had to like tell volunteers what you wanted. They would get it for you, right? So they wore masks, they wore gloves. They would get it for you, and they would come back. And so now you're physically like separated from the aid station. Also, you're like 6 feet away,
Right.
and you would tell the volunteer what you wanted. They'd go out there, get it for you, come back, and then give it to you, and then it would proceed in that way, right? So it wasn't like it added this additional layer, right, of time that you needed to account for while fueling at aid stations. So it was just different overall. But I would say that the number one difference was the fact that people were encouraged to stay socially distant, right? And a big part of ultras is running and getting to know people, having that conversation and having that human connection, right?
Yeah.
So when you're running a 100-mile race and the race organization, for very understandable reasons, is encouraging people to keep their distance and not travel in groups, you're taking away a critical element to these 100-mile runs, or to the ultra running in general. But there's nothing you can do. This is the environment that we live in. So getting used to, there were races that I ran totally alone, which is weird because there's other participants in those races, right? But no one, and people didn't want to run with someone else that they didn't know, because they're like, well, we have to stay social, we have to stay responsible, we have to socially distance. And like, realistically, I don't know where you're coming from. Like, you could be coming from a part of the country that is a hotspot right now, and I don't want to risk, like, getting close to you, right? And that's the mentality that people have. It's a fear, and I think that change was very noticeable, very evident in races once races started back up again.
Yeah, totally. So now we're approaching the end of the hundreds in this timeline, this dialogue we've got. So when what I know you said at around 68, you had made the commitment, you were finishing this out. At what point, when you got closer to the 100th, were you like, you could smell the hay in the barn, all those things, you're getting excited, or was it something you kind of didn't let yourself think about? What was your mindset with that? Like, were you just focused on getting to the 100, and then when it happened, that was the moment?
I had that confidence at 95, like the last 5%, all up until that point. When I left my like apartment, my number one fear was, because I still had 20 to go, right?
Yeah.
My number one fear after leaving my apartment was, what if I get sick, right? It wasn't the physical. It wasn't like pulling something, fracturing something or tripping on a route, because at that point I was pretty well versed in running. Like, I knew how to temper my effort. I knew what my cadence was, and I knew how to be cognizant of cutoff times, and when it needs. And so that part of it, I was pretty confident in. What my number one fear was getting sick, right? Like I don't know how I would react if I got sick, right? Is it something that takes me out? Is it something that, and also, even if I got sick and it turned out to be not a big deal for me, like maybe I was asymptomatic, I didn't want to endanger other people. So part of it was, the last 20 weeks of the project, I was going and getting tested. Like, every place that I went to, if I travel to a hotspot, like in an area where the transmission rate and the number of new cases were increasing by X% on a daily basis,
Yeah.
I would get tested like right after that race.
Okay.
And that is a very uncomfortable test.
Yeah.
It's a very uncomfortable test. And but before I started getting those tests like on a regular basis, I took the antibody test. And I was keeping my fingers crossed that and that was actually the first one that I took before I went back outside, like to run these hundreds like outdoors.
Right.
I took the antibody test, and part of me was really hoping that I had it, right,
Yeah.
and that like I processed it and it was already done, and I had the antibodies, and they were good for like a few months or whatever, however long they were good for. This way to have to worry about until the end of the project.
Right.
But it came back negative. I'm like, all right, man, but I hoped, right? I hoped at some point, I don't know, something happened and I had it and I had the antibodies and I don't have to worry about this anymore. But that didn't happen. So I had to be super careful, super cognizant of like air travel,
Right.
how I was interacting with other people, wearing the mask, like using hand sanitizer, all this stuff. And it was really, so that was the last 20 weeks of the project. And it wasn't until I got into the 90s where I'm like, oh man, I gotta be really careful now, because it's like the worst thing to do would be to get sick at
Right.
98 or 99 and not, and it's like be too knocked out to like even do it, or like even if you were sick couldn't even do it, right? So I thought like, if I got sick and I had to do the last runs on a treadmill, I have the treadmill in my living room. I can do it. I don't want to do it, but I can do it, right? Because that would be the safe thing to do. But then the other unknown was, what if you get sick and it actually knocks you out? So like that's a very real thing too. What if you're physically unable to actually run 100 miles? So all these things are going in my head. So it wasn't until I got to 95 or after 95 where I was more comfortable.
Yeah.
Like after 95, I was like, okay, I'm getting more confident now that we can get to the end of this thing relatively okay. And then 99 comes, and that was Utah, right? And I had such an incredible support system out there. That was such a fun race. It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
It was not easy, but like it wasn't until I finished Utah that I thought that I knew, okay, this is it. Like we're getting this thing done. And then that whole like week, I was on cloud nine. Like
Yeah.
I started writing the the course manual. Like I came up with the course, what it should be. And then I started writing the manual, and I started, like writing the time estimates and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And like I was having fun with it. And I'm like, "God, this is it. We're doing this thing.
That
There's
your
no
your
stopping."
race manual was, I think, more detailed than some manuals they put out there by race directors. I mean, it was impressive.
I had a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun with it, to be totally honest. I didn't look at it as work at all. Like I wanted to do something like that, and I knew it was going to be. So the interesting thing is that I was getting, before I announced what the course was, I was getting suggestions from people that I should do this run, or I should run around Manhattan, or it should be, the last run should be here to here, or here to here, or loops. Like, gosh, someone actually suggested loops. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Wait, what? No. And then I thought, like, and all those suggestions totally fine, like, on their own.
Right.
But I was thinking up here. Like I had to, this is the last one, and it needs to mean something special, right? It needs to be big. And I knew it had to be big. Like I knew it was gonna be tough,
Yeah.
but it had to be big, right? And I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna put in the time, the work, the energy to get this done, and I want to do it right. And so I put out that race manual, that race course, so that for myself mainly, so I can document this, but also for other people who wanted to join, right? So anyone who wanted to join anytime, anywhere along the course, and it actually turned out to be very well, because a lot of people joined along the course, and they followed that race manual, and they're like, hey, you said you're going to be here, right? And so here we are.
Right.
Like, all right, that's awesome. And I had people help me out with writing the letters. Like, I was very nervous about the letters, because on paper, everything is easy. Like
Right.
you can draw the route, you can draw the letters, and I love Manhattan because it has a beautiful canvas where you can write, you
Right.
know, like you've got these things and you can write a message, and I love that.
Yeah.
But like execution is a totally different story. Like if you're not careful, if you're not paying attention, you can run too long in one direction, and now your letter looks like something else. And my fear was I might wind up writing an advertisement for a car company like Honda, right? Game of Hondos. How funny would that be if I wrote Game of Hondos and all of a sudden, oops,
Right.
that's not what I meant.
Right. And I'll pause you right here. For those of you listening on live or with the podcast replay, what Michael's talking about is running, and then your GPS is recording where you're running. And so he wanted to spell out the Game of Hundos and run, son, run. So just a little background for you if you're listening to it.
That's right. Sorry, I actually
No,
said what it was. But the first part, so it was broken up into two parts. The first part was in Manhattan, and that's what I call the quote unquote technical part of the run. And it was technical because I'm spelling out these words, Game of Hundos, right? And when you're spelling out words, it's not there's a lot of double backing on letters so that you make sure that everything connects the way you want it to connect. You have to make sure it's legible, right? Like did I use the right streets and cross streets to make this letter so that it actually looks like that letter? There's a lot of that, and you constantly have to, and they're very short, abrupt turns, right? So I'll give you like the middle bridge of the E, for example, right? Is one block. So to make that bridge, what you do is you go and when you start running that bridge, you run down the avenue block and then you run back. So it literally is a one block out and back. And then you have to make an abrupt, left turn to go back down 2 blocks. And like you have to be cognizant of these things the entire time. And so there's no zoning out. There's no fluid conversation. Of course, you could have fluid conversation, but you have to pay attention to what you're doing. I was lucky in that I had Phil, Neil, Maud, and myself as the core group for the Manhattan part of it. Help me out write these letters. So it took a lot of pressure off of me, because at that point I knew that I didn't have to pay so much close attention and stress about whether or not we're doing these letters, because I had 4 minds on the same thing. So that if I started running in the wrong direction, one of those other 3 minds would say, "Hey, stop.
Yeah.
You're going the wrong way." And they did that on a number of occasions where I thought, all right, we're just la-di-da-di-da.
Right.
And I'm like, wait, no, now we got to turn left. And I'm like, yes, you're right. All right, turn around, la-di-da-di-da.
It sounds like you had a phenomenal crew from start to finish. I know there were several that stayed with you from start to finish, including a film crew, right, that you had with you.
That's right. They were amazing. And that's so really quickly, that's what I want to highlight in this, is that it was never a solo effort, right? The 100-mile runs. There might have been a few races where I was totally on my own and, it was tough. But for the most part, by and large, I've had amazing support from friends all over the country, right? Who volunteered their time to help me achieve this goal. Not only friends that I had already known, but people who I met on the course at a race helped me finish the last 30 miles. Like I had cases where people who I had never met before, didn't know before that weekend, helped me run, or they ran with me for 10 hours. Could you imagine that? Just like all of a sudden, you don't know this person from anywhere, and you're spending 10 hours with it. Like that's a very special commitment. Give up your time in that way. And there were a lot of times where people had done that for me. And so that's why one of the questions that Shai's the director of the film crew, one of the questions he asked me was, you always speak about this when you reference the Game of Hundos, when you reference races, you always speak about it in terms of we and us and not I and me. And I'm like, well, yes, it's very important to me to make sure that I give credit where credit is due, right? So I'd love to say I ran these all on my own and hey, I'm Superman and I can do these things. But the reality is, this always has been a team effort, right? And I get to where I've gotten to where I am because of the phenomenal help and support that I have from friends and family and people that I meet on the course. And I'm very appreciative and grateful for that. But on that day, I had an enormous amount of support, and that was just overwhelming. I didn't expect it. And so I knew that people would come out. And I thought, for the people who come out, they'll probably be at the support stops that I indicated on on that course manual.
Yeah.
But then that's it, right? Like no one really wants to sign up to run all of this back and forth to spell out a letter, right? Like who wants to do that? So I thought realistically, I'll probably see a lot of people on that weekend, but I'll probably see people in spurts where they like I'll see them at Columbus Circle, 59th Street. They'll say hi, a quick hi and bye, and maybe give like some type of fuel, chocolate milk, whatever it was. And there was a lot of that, but there was also a lot of groups that came with us and stood with us for a very long time. And we had a pretty strong overnight group. And that surprised the heck out of me because it was cold, it wasn't comfortable. These are the slow miles. And I thought we were going to be on our own for the overnight because who's gonna wanna like sign up to run when it's cold outside along the beach where it's even colder. Right. That's Coney Island. And I'm like, I'm like, no one's gonna want to do that. People want to do the daytime running hours. They want to take they want to do that. And no one's gonna want to run overnight. I don't even want to run overnight. But it turned out to be the case where we had a strong group, and that was like totally shocking to me.
That's awesome. And so let's talk about the finish. What were you feeling? You hit 100 miles. Yeah. If you could even put it into words, what was that like finishing?
So I had a tough time with the overnight stretch, with sleep. Like I was very tired, everything hurt, and we made it to Queens. We were in Queens at that point. And like mile 83, 80, like low 80s. And I knew back in my mind, like, oh gosh, still have 18 miles to go. And I know what that feels like because I've done it for 99 weeks. I know what that feels. The last 18 miles in a 100-mile run are very tough. And I know what it feels like. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a very long day, very long morning. And I'm doing the math in my head and like worst case scenario, going to finish by 6 p.m. I didn't want to finish, like late afternoon, but that's the reality is it looks like that's the way it's going to be. And I'm already accepting it. I'm doing the math in my head, but this amazing thing happened. So like we're in Queens and more people started joining us, right? Like a lot of people and that group kept growing. And so like we're going through Queens, and we're going back into Brooklyn over the Pulaski Bridge. And at that point, we had so many people with us that I didn't realize would join us. I didn't expect to join us. And here they were. And it gave me so much energy just to know that we were going to have a strong finishing group, right? And so something happened on Franklin Avenue, or as Franklin Street. Franklin Street turns into Kent Avenue. And then on Kent Avenue, because that was one of my original run routes when I was first like training for ultra distance, was that stretch on Kent Avenue, and I hadn't run it in years. And once I hit that, this switch went off, and I had 85 miles left at that point. At that point, I don't know what happened, but my legs just, the turnover was crazy. So like I went from I don't know at that point maybe 12-minute miles, 13-minute miles, to running 7-minute miles, and it was, and I all the way back to my block, right? I don't know where it came from. It was just like that smell of the barn effect. I talk about this all the time. Smelling the barn. It's real. It is 100% real. And it's like when your brain knows that you're about to realize something or you're getting close to, completing a goal, it will give you, and it's all mental. That's what I love about this, is like this journey is like you're finding out that we're capable of amazing things just by virtue of the way of like our minds, right? Our minds will take us to where we want them, to where we want to go. And so like I had the legs all of a sudden that I didn't have for the last 30 miles. Like, where did that come from? I don't know. It was like I was getting closer to home. And so I got home, right? And I had 8 miles left to go around the block. And I was 32 laps. And the last thing I wanted to do was drag this thing out, right? I didn't want to drag it out. I know that 8 miles, again, we're going back to the last 8 miles in a 100-mile run. That it's very long, it's very hard. But I was so, I was pumped up by, one, I'm finishing this thing, right? That smell the barn effect, it is real. Right. I was pumped up because I had a large group and I had a large running group. Like, you were part of it. You were DJ.
It was fun.
and those 32 laps, honestly, they went by like I couldn't believe. Like
Yeah.
we ran most of it. We ran most of it. And then the closer we got to the final mile, which in my mind I always knew that I wanted to live stream the final mile. Elaine was there, Yoshiko was there, you were there, Marcus was there, Marina came, Gloria came, and then like we're running this last mile all on Facebook Live, and I'm like, oh my god, this is it. And then you start playing. You played Final Countdown. You played a bunch of songs. It was awesome. And then you started playing Rocky, going the distance. And I was like, all right, that's it, we're done. It took off. And then we crossed that line, and Brooklyn Bridge Park was the finish line, right? The invisible finish line. We got there, and it was just like I couldn't like if you told me that we had, hey, oops, we made a mistake, we have to run 5 more miles. I had so much energy at that point. I was like so happy at that point that if you told me that at that point, like, hey, Mike, terrible news, man. Like, we got it wrong. We really have 5 more miles to go. Like, I would have been like, all right, let's go.
Amazing. So then you finished, and what was going through your mind when you hit 100?
Gosh, it was and I kind of expected this. Like, it wasn't gonna hit. It wasn't gonna settle until like the next day or days later, right? And it took some time. It was very satisfying that I didn't to know that I didn't have to do another 100-mile week, right? Because they're all I start most races on the second half. So if you want to talk about the Game of Hundos, first half is the first 50, second half is like, or in thirds. Actually, let's do thirds because pandemic 100, totally different environment than the first 2/3 pre-pandemic. So if you want the last third of it, so I would categorize the first third of hundreds as having very high confidence when I started the race, right? Like every race I started had very high confidence, legs felt great, feet felt great, like, all right, let's do this thing. And then that confidence level like starts to it fluctuates all throughout, right? And then you finish, you cross the line, and you encounter some tough moments. The second third, right? I would say the confidence level was like much lower at the start because the cumulative effect of all of these footsteps that you're putting on your body, this pounding, doesn't come for free. It actually, this takes something out of you, right? And so, like, I noticed it in terms of slower recovery, a slower pace overall. Like, I couldn't, when I did that 22-hour Daytona 100, Kevin, like, and you told me I had to do another 22-hour, run during the second third, I would have told you, I don't think I'm capable of that. I honestly, I don't know. I can't do that. And then the final third, where there were some races, there were some weekends where I didn't have that confidence. Like I thought, like, well, no matter how this weekend goes, I'm going to finish the distance because that's what I committed to. That's what I'm dedicated. Like, and I will go for as long as it takes. I don't care because this is like, I have a particular dedication to this project and I want to see it through. But there were some weekends where I didn't have that high degree of confidence starting the race. Like, I was very concerned with the elevation or the altitude or the technicalness of the course. Or the course itself being loops, and just like knowing that's very taxing mentally to run loops after being trapped home running loops around your living rooms. Like, and I have a high degree of confidence. But then, like, you find a way to finish it, whether or not you have the high degree of confidence or not. You do the race and you have your fluctuations, your high points, your low points, and then you find a way to make it to the finish line.
Right. Amazing. All right, so I'm gonna ask one more question and then we'll open it up for Q&A. And very appropriately, we are approaching the 100-minute mark in this interview. So that's pretty fun to do.
Great timing.
It is good. It is good. So one of my final questions for you is, and I'll put you on the spot here, but with these RunVenture interviews we've been doing, one of my favorite parts is hearing, which you've already spoke to, in the interview already, but just hearing from runners going below the surface a little bit of the actual run to talk about, like, you know, what it meant to them, how it was life changing. I mean, obviously, this was a life changing event, but if you could put some of it into words of, you know, just what the experience has meant to you and how it's, you know, maybe changed your perspective and worldview, all that stuff.
Yeah. Man, you're putting me on the spot. No, I'm kidding.
Damn, I know.
I'm totally kidding. So the first thing, so this is, you know, obvious. I think about these things. The question, why? Why are you doing this?
Yep.
First and foremost, why are you doing this? So like, you know, when you engage in a project like this, your reasons for doing it should not be, I want to do this because there's a record out there, I want to break it. That's great. That could be your that could be your motivation for doing it. Um, that shouldn't be the only motivation, right? There's got to be something else. And the only reason I say that is because putting yourself physically through this challenge of running this many does not come for free. And like I said this before, but I'll say it again. It's like you are taking something away physically, right? Whether that's in performance or future performance, or like a longer term recovery timeline. You know, like I'd like, you know, finishing this project. Uh, just to give you an example, this past weekend I ran with Phil, finishing his perimeter project of the all 5 boroughs of New York City, and the last borough was Brooklyn. He saved it so that I could run with him, and I honestly thought that if I take you know a weekend off, we planned it so that we would run it 2 weeks after the Game of Hundos finished, right? And I thought, okay, if I have 10 days of recovery of doing absolutely nothing and just letting my legs recover, then I should be totally fine for this run when we run around Brooklyn. And then you know this weekend comes, and you know we start out relatively, you know, at a really good pace, everything's feeling good, and then but like I encounter challenges, you know, like it was not the easy run that I thought it was going to be. I honestly thought, okay, well, this is 60 miles, like it's not 100. We're
Right.
going to finish in the same day. Like I should be able to do this, no problem. But it was hard. It was hard, you know, like, and so the second half was like, man, you know, like this, you know, I'm not there yet in terms of recovery. Recovery is going to take longer than 2 weeks.
Right.
um, so that's the first thing. The first thing is find the reason why you're doing it, because the thing that you're doing is very physically taxing, very mentally taxing. So don't do it because you want to. There's a record out there that you want to break. I really find the why. Why are you doing it? So of course, just having that. Of course, you people are competitive. So if you want to break a record, that should absolutely be on your list. But there should be something else.
Right.
And for me, it was going out and exploring my personal physical capacity, right? So like even before the Game of Hundos, even before like I embarked on this journey, I was very curious to find what my personal capacity was physically and mentally. And this is like a different study that I had, that I called like the capacity curve analysis, right? And some of it I've like written about and posted on. A lot of it I just keep to myself and like my own self analysis. And the capacity curve is like, okay, what is your capacity at different effort levels, different distances? So if you plot this out on like, you know, 100-meter dash out to 100 miles,
Yeah.
in different effort scenarios, like what does that look like? And you know, so it's like that's like, it's like a different thing that I do, right? And so like I love the data behind this, right? And I love the fact that 100-mile races give you a lot of data, but then
Right.
you quickly realize that that's not one, it's not nearly enough data, right? And two, every race is different, right? But that's something that meant it was very curious, that I was very curious about, right? So personally, what is my capacity physically and mentally, right? And so I was very like very curious about that question. So like that was in the back of my mind, that had always been one of the reasons why like I push myself to do these ultra distances, right? And then of course I so that's one, right? The trying to break the record for the you know, cumulative weeks or number of hundreds run a year, that came second. That was never a primary goal. But because we are competitive beings, of course it became a goal, right? So that was part of it. And like in my list of reasons that was also tacked on as a reason. It wasn't the first reason. And then of course I run these for David, right? So David is my inspiration. He died in 2012. He and I had different life philosophies. He valued life experience, like going out to different parts of the world and experiencing what it's like to eat food of different cultures, and then just going to different like cultures in general and experiencing what it's like. And that never appealed to me, right? I honestly thought like, I don't know, man. I think what we should be doing is not traveling when we're in our 20s. We should be working, and you should save that money, and then invest like smart, like intelligently, and then grow that money, and then when you're later on in life, when you're established, you can do whatever you want. But when you're young, like you have to use this time to set yourself up for the long term, right? That was always my mentality. And then his mentality was totally different. We were also different, personality wise, right? He was always outgoing. He was always like, he was a people person, and he could just like get in a room and then get people smiling and laughing, and just like he was very warm to be around, right? Like he's the guy that you wanted to speak. He was very, very like, like happy and just very interesting person. And like, and I was quiet. I was more like to myself kind of thing. Like if I had a weekend, after work, like after the work week, I would find comfort in staying in, right? Like, like, oh my God, that was a really tough work week. I just want to stay home and wind down for the week and watch movies, and like that's it. I don't like parties and stuff like that. I don't have the energy. It's too much social energy for me. I worked 80 hours, and I'm like, now I want to have just like downtime. And so we differed on those different like life philosophies and personalities. And then, but he always told me that I should not be as like work focused as I was. That was a constant message, and that he would tell me, and I would tell him otherwise, right? We'd always have this like, just like difference in opinion. We never fought over it, but it was a difference in opinion. It's like, hey, you should do this, and I would say, no, you should do this, and it was like, okay, well, yeah. Then he died. He was riding his bike to work in February 2012, March 2012, and then he was hit by a car, and that was it. He was 29. And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh my God, well, first of all, I just lost my best friend, right? And I didn't know how to think about that. I was very angry about it, because here, this great guy, right, is very, very good values, very just like, how does his light get extinguished the way that it did? And you have everyone else like in the world who, or people, I should say, in the world who do like terrible things, and they have all of these second chances, and like, and they like, well, I don't understand how that works. How's that fair? That's not fair at all. So then I went through that period of like asking why, like, why did that happen? Right? Like, how did a person like David go out like that? Like, what? Like, how does that make sense? So, like I had personal, like I had to answer that question. But then I also thought about this stuff that he was telling me, like, you should go out and experience the world. And I thought, well, you know what? That's probably sound advice, because, he died young. What? And if I die young, I would be dying with no type of like really like, life experience, other than working a bunch.
Yeah.
And I that was outside of my comfort zone, as is, like, going out, or like socializing more with people, or like talking or going to parties and like stuff like that, right? Because like my personality type is not to do those things, but I pushed, like I gave it an effort. And so, like, at work, I was in research at the time, and we'd have these work events where, you present your research, you have conversations with clients, and then afterwards there'd be this, people would go to the client event, which was, at some nearby bar, right? And in the back of my mind, I always thought, okay, just make an appearance, just go there, talk to have a conversation with one or two clients, just show that you were there, and then go home. Like,
Right.
that wasn't my scene. And then I started to think differently. Like, okay, don't do that. Like, focus on a different execution instead of going home early. Like, talk to more people, right? And then I did, and I found out almost always that I had a better time, just like, and it didn't have to be a work conversation. It just had a conversation with, someone who I just met that night, right? And then I found like, okay, this is cool. And then I started racing. Again, wanted to run marathon for David, and then it progressed into these other distances. And I eventually realized, like, this not only is a physical test to what you are capable of, it is also a social event, right? Like, you're meeting new people, you're getting different different opinions, different conversations that you're having, and you're meeting people from different areas of the world, different parts of the country, and they think differently, and that's valuable insight that you would not get otherwise if you stayed in the same, like, geographic location, right? Like home.
Right.
And I started to value that more. So my why is different from, everyone else's why. Like, everyone's going to have a different why for anything they do. But for me personally, it was go and discover what my personal capacity was, right? I wanted to know. And then, followed by go and see the world, right? Engage in conversation, make friends, put yourself in social situations that you normally would not have put yourself in, and see what you learn, right? And so and that was second. And then third is the competitive part of it. It's like, there are records to these things, and let's see what we can do.
That is awesome. I love that it's we could call it well-rounded, but it wasn't just one particular reason that you went on this 100-week journey. So I'm gonna take a peek in the live chat to see what questions we have. We can go through them. All right, so let me pull up the chat here. 97 comments. Holy smokes. Hopefully I can scroll through these. Give me a little bit of patience here. Let's see. A lot of comments. Looks like it was pretty chatty, talking about 3,000 loops around the rug. Oh, you got to make sure you hop on here and read some of these comments.
Oh, it's there. How do I? Let's see. Is it in the chat?
It is. It's in the Facebook Live. I'm gonna have to open it on.
Oh, Facebook Live. Okay, I'm in Zoom.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go on my laptop because my cell phone won't scroll down that far. So hold on one second here. All right, pages. Sassquad trail running. Okay. Yep, 97 comments. Here we go. My cell phone won't scroll down that far, so I gotta cut the volume here. Okay, here we go. Let's see if it'll expand at all. All right, I'm troubleshooting a little bit because the comments are maxing out my screen. So let's see here.
I think.
Yeah, I don't know if I can see any questions. So if you had a question, if you can drop it immediately, I'll keep the screen open. So then I'll be able to see it, hopefully, right now. But I can do a couple of rapid fire questions for you because I had a few written down just in case something like this happened. So these are quick questions that you can just shoot the answer off real quick. All right.
Okay.
What running shoes did you use primarily?
Asics, 100%.
Basics. Okay. GPS watch.
Garmin Phoenix 3.
Okay. And what was your fastest 100?
Was that Daytona one? 2018 Daytona 100, 22-hour one.
Okay. And then how about the slowest? Was it the treadmill one? Or I mean the apartment?
It was the backwards one. So the backwards treadmill 100 was 60 hours.
Okay. So, okay. And then the next question. Oh, okay. Finally. Okay. I'm sorry. Now I've got the questions here. So these will be better than mine. Okay. Rosa Tolentino wants to know, did you run the week after the 100 or did you rest the entire week?
No, I did nothing. So for 10 days, my step count was probably fewer than 1,000 steps per day.
Okay.
Maybe even fewer than 500 steps per day. And that was by design. I wanted to give like total complete rest and then see where we would shake out.
Okay. Robin Chase wants to know, did you have any injuries over the 100 weeks?
So I didn't have injuries in the traditional sense, where I didn't pull anything, twist anything, sprain, strain, pop, break, and thankfully, and I didn't get sick. And I'm very grateful for those things. But I did get slow. Like just my execution, my pacing slowed down significantly. Like I could always start, and this is what I mean when I say like this doesn't come for free, right? So every week will take something out of you. So I slowed down in pace, but I always had the ability to start the runs quick. And what I mean by quickly is I could sustain a 10-minute pace if I had to, like at the gate. But the time, like the time to fatigue, right? So got shorter and shorter, right? So if you look at it from like the very first one, the time to fatigue would be like half a day, 16 hours into the run. It was just like I was fresh, and it would take longer before I got tired, and that slowly compressed, and so it would take shorter amount of time before I got tired, and so that was all cumulative effect of running these things back to back to back to back, and it's a very big ask of your body, like your legs, your mind, and so like all of it did manifest itself in like a slower pace overall, but also like a quicker time to becoming tired.
Right. All right, next question. This is from Bailey Lewis. Did you get dizzy running around your rooftop and around the living room?
Yes. Well, no, actually, yes. The living room. So the living room run took 59 hours running like loops and loops and loops and loops. When I first started, I had fresh legs, right? Like fresh legs. And so I ran, I if you want to call it running, it was more like fast shuffling. But I was faster in the beginning, and I did get dizzy. It was weird.
Yeah.
But again, this barn effect is very real. And if you were tuning into the last 5 miles of that indoor 100, when I got to mile 96, like when I started mile 96, I sped up because I wanted to be done. I was excited that I was going to finish this thing, and I was like, I'm singing, like I had music playing, and it was a great time. But as I got faster, I was also getting a little dizzy. Like, whoa, okay, I need to slow this one down.
Awesome. All right, we got a couple more in here. This is from G. He wants to know, do you have any plans to run a 200, which I believe you've already done, right?
Yeah. But like, I honestly don't know what the future schedule looks like.
Okay, I'm sure everybody's. I asked you that last week when we spoke. Everyone's probably asking you, right? What's next?
Yeah, what's next is a big question.
So you don't want to go on the record right now.
So the very next thing that I had planned was the run around Brooklyn perimeter with Phil, and we did that. And so like I have no plans for the next one.
Okay. All right. This is from Yoshiko. Wants to know is questions. Which songs did you request DJ Kim?
Yes.
So go ahead. You mentioned a couple before, but you can tell everyone you're playing.
So just to set the state, to set the mood of that final 8 miles, Yoshiko was on cowbell. So she got a cowbell and
Yeah.
she was ringing it the entire time. It was awesome. Um, and then Kim was on DJ. Like you had the speaker, the portable speaker.
Yeah.
And so the songs that we played Final Countdown, I think 3 times. Um, uh, Rocky, Going the Distance, Queen. I don't know if we played Bohemian Rhapsody, but we played We're the Champions, and there's a other anthem, one song that there. What is it? We're the Champions, and there's a second one.
There was another Queen song in there. I think.
There was that.
Or
I'm
Eye of the
blanking now
Tiger?
what it
Did you
was.
say Eye of the Tiger?
You did do Eye of the Tiger,
Eye of
yes.
the Tiger,
Twice.
Yeah.
So, so you need a little Eye of the Tiger action. And so like I kept trying to think of these anthem kind of songs. The funny part is I don't really know the lyrics to these songs. Like Final Countdown, it beats me what they're saying, right? And so but but the chorus, it's the chorus, right? And so it's funny because we're trying to sing along. Like, I don't know what the lyrics are, but when the chorus came on, we were like super strong and confident, like yeah.
Totally. I'm sure it was very beautiful to onlookers.
Yeah.
All right, couple more questions here. Jason Friedman wants to know, what was your strategy to keep your energy steady? So maybe like what were your go-to nutrition strategy for the hundreds?
So 2 parts of this question, 2 answers. I would say a 2-part answer, I should say. It's expectation versus fueling. So for fueling, you always have to fuel. You should fuel. Whenever you have the opportunity to fuel or to add calories to your base, what you already have, you should do it. So like whenever I hit aid stations, even if I wasn't hungry, I knew if there was food there and I hadn't eaten in the last 2 hours, I got to put something in, right? So like that was first and foremost, because when you're in a calorie deficit, you can turn it around. Of course, it takes time to turn that around, but it's a time consuming process. You don't feel great. Doubt starts to creep in. So like, you don't want to be in that position, right? So a calorie deficit is a real physical thing to overcome. That's a difficult thing to overcome. So don't do it. The second thing is expectation, is that knowing that you're gonna peak and valley at different times, right? So I would say that's my number one. That's my secret weapon, is knowing that the bad times don't last, right? And I speak about this, and I've written about it like a lot. Is that in every 100, there's no single 100-mile race where I felt like absolutely amazing from beginning to end, right? Every single race, I will at least have one low, right? And there are many races where I have multiple lows, and those lows, they vary in length, they vary in time, and they vary in severity, right? Sometimes you have like really, really bad lows, and it's like, oh gosh. But what gets me through those lows is knowing that they're not going to last very long. They're not going to be there forever, right? The other thing that I would say is when you're in pain, you don't necessarily have to be in a low, right? Because a low, I would classify lows as like a mental low. Like you're like, doubt comes in, you're not moving very fast. You're like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to make it. That's a low, right? When you're just in pain, and like there are also times when you don't have to be in a low mentally, but things hurt. Laughing and telling jokes and just being in a good, like, happy mood will almost always get your mind off of the pain. It works like magic, right? It's like that is like a drug that I can't tell, like, that will work almost all the time. Like your brain will release endorphins and like feel good things, and all of a sudden that pain in your legs or wherever it is, you don't focus on it anymore, right? Because you're focused on this good time that you're having, and you're feeling great, right? And so I would advise, like, they don't have to be truly funny jokes, but if you have if you have like 2 or 3 jokes just to tell, they could be I've got very corny jokes, right? I mean, none of my, maybe 1 or 2 of my jokes are truly funny. They're like so terrible, but they're so bad they're good, kind of thing. And so when you tell them, it's like I start laughing because I know how bad they are. And so right away, it's like I'm getting my mind off of the pain, right? It's like, oh my God, my feet were killing me, but like I'm laughing, I'm having a good time. I'm making people laugh. Like people are, and now everyone's involved, right? And now maybe other people have jokes to tell, and their jokes, and hopefully, are much funnier than mine. And now we're all laughing.
That's awesome. Those are some awesome strategies. Here's another quick question here. From Michael Feldman wants to know what kind of treadmill you have.
Nordic Track something. The funny thing though, so I don't know the model number, but it's the base model number. If you go to Amazon, you type in Nordic Track treadmill, the one that comes up, it'll be Amazon's choice. It's whatever base model that is. The funny thing is, when I ordered it at the very start of the pandemic, it was how much? It was 500. It was 500 or 600, somewhere between 500 and 600. Yeah. And people, and then I got it and I put it together, and that's another thing. You should always have two people put that thing together. Otherwise it could be very difficult. And so I put it together and started running on it, and it's a very good treadmill for the price. Like very good. It has shocks to it and all that. People were asking me what model it was, and that seems to be a very good treadmill. It's like taking the beating that you're giving it, and I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely you're correct. Yeah, it is. So here's the model, and I would give the link, like the Amazon link, to people who ask for it, and they come back and say, "Are you sure this is the right one? Because it's telling me it's $1,200." I'm like, 12? No. Select the base model. Like I understand there's other part, like you get the one with the screen on it. It's got a TV. You can put an iPad. Like, no, you don't need all that stuff. Just get the base one. Right. And they're like, I am on the base one. It's saying 1,200, and for the other ones, it's like 3,000. I'm like, wait, no. And so I go on Amazon, and that was just the market. Demand had spiked so much that this treadmill that I got literally doubled in price in like a 2-week span, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God, people are getting treadmills left and right then.
Yeah, I think that happened with bicycles, weights, all type of fitness equipment. It
makes sense.
Jack the prices up, So. All right, we do have a couple more questions here. Rebecca Constant wants to know, what was your recovery like? Did you have a go-to certain food, Normatex, massage?
So I had none of those things. I would say atypical in the recovery strategy. So and that's because things like my work week was very packed, and so to make the condos work, it was very, as soon as Friday afternoon came, I'm flying out of, traveling from Midtown Manhattan to JFK or LaGuardia, and then flying on location, driving wherever to that race, doing the race, and then driving back to the airport, flying back, sometimes hopping on the red eye if it's on the West Coast, and then, morning of, come back home, go to work, right? So I never had that luxury of downtime, enough downtime to do the Normatec or do a massage and so that's what people ask me, hey, so you get a sports massage every week? Yeah. And I'm like, no, there's no time. It's like as soon as I land and I go to work Monday, it's I hit the ground running, literally. It's like I gotta get to work, Monday morning meeting, and we got to get through the work week because I need to make sure that I'm ready and prepared for this execution again on Friday afternoon. Right. What I do have time for, and I don't do it every week, but I do it once in a while, is maybe once every 3 weeks, is an Epsom salt bath. And I truly believe in that. It helps, it soothes the muscles, right? And a hot one, just make sure the water temperature is 100 to 102 degrees. I know there's no way to figure that out. You can do it by touch, but it actually helps soothe your muscles. The magnesium sulfate in the Epsom salt will help your leg muscles recover faster. I have noticed that. The only thing is you need the time to actually do that. So it does take preparation, right? You need to draw a bath and you put in the Epsom salt. You actually need to have the time to sit in there for 40 minutes or whatever it is. But if you do that, it should help. And then the other thing is nutrition. So during the week, I eat a lot, right? I take it, and not because I'm forcing myself to, but because that's just my body it wants these calories. It needs those calories. So I have 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, 2 dinners, right? It just happens every day. During the week, I'd make sure that I had, I like milk and I like dairy things, and milk has calcium, vitamin D. And like you'll notice I always ask for chocolate milk in these races. But what I also do is I take supplements, right? So I'll take multivitamin, B12, vitamin A, vitamin D, zinc, calcium. Make sure that iron. Make sure that you're taking these things because running 100 miles will take a lot out of your body, right? So you need to replace these supplements because maybe we don't always get them in the amounts that we need in our everyday diet, right? And so if that's not if you have a very balanced diet and you can get all of those things, the magnesium, the calcium, like you can get those things in what you take in every day, that's great. But if you can't, take supplements. And like I've noticed a difference between when weeks where like I remember sometimes I forget, right? Like I forget, okay, oh, forgot to take multivitamins this week, right? Yeah, I do notice a difference. And so like, I mean, it's a subtle difference, right? It's not a night and day, but like that any kind of like edge that you can have in completing this thing, like you want to take. And so like take your multivitamins and take your supplements.
Awesome. All right, it looks like we've got 2 more questions. I do want to say shout out to Elena Costa for helping me with these comments. She went back and was reposting the questions. Thank you,
Elaine.
Elena. I appreciate it. This is kind of a funny one from Chip Tilden wants to know any marriage proposals and then really face.
Oh my gosh. During this no.
Okay. I thought you were getting ready to tell a story about how someone proposed. Okay. Okay. And you know what? This will be a good one to end on. This is from Ian Golden. I'm going to change it to top moment just so with time. What was the top moment or place that you stopped and you were caught by a beautiful spot and appreciated how thankful you were to be doing what you're doing? That's a really great question to end on. And I'm sure, I mean, that's hard. That's not fair to ask you that over, 100 races, but maybe what's the first one that kind of comes to your mind? Yeah.
Good question that actually
Ian. That
stumped me.
was
Oh my
great.
gosh, that was a good one. Man. All right. Let's see here. There's let- okay, I do have one, but it's so first I will say that there have been many destination type races where I've gone there and the scenery and the nature and just being in that environment has absolutely blown me away, right? And so like examples of that are Orcas Island, Antelope Canyon, Eastern States, like the Tahoe Rim Trail, like those races, and any race in Colorado, those races, like they are uh like visually stunning, and like they appeal to your senses in a very positive way. So I'll say that first and foremost. The one race where I really took time to appreciate this journey that I'm on, and again, it's not gonna make sense, but it makes sense to me,
Yeah.
is the around the block 100. So the 100 miler where I was running around my block for
Yeah.
400 rotations, um, and when I was doing it alone. So so when I started that race on a Saturday morning, and I had support from friends for the first 24 hours. And so at any point during those 24 hours, I had people helping me, running with me, pacing, crewing, like all those things. And we had a fantastic time. It got me to mile 62. And the remainder of the 38 miles I had to do on my own. And I was totally fine. And it was coming up. So, and I have to mention this. Elaine was during the live stream in the Facebook. Elaine was saying, "Walk the hill," because there's on the block there's a section where it's a subtle hill, right? but when you're running that distance, it feels like a mountain.
Right.
It was in running those last 38 miles and walking that section that it started to hit, like the heaviness of what I was doing started to hit me, right? And I don't know if it was because like it was just like gratitude for being able to run outside again, or the fact that I was doing this because at that time that was number 79. And I don't know if it was because like I was realizing that like I made it, like I I was locked in my home. I had to run these hundreds indoors, and I actually made it. I made it outside. And so, it was those whole 38 miles was appreciation and just like gratitude, because I was just so happy to be outside again. And like I didn't crack under the pressure. I didn't stop, and like I survived 10 weeks inside, and now I'm outside again. And I had fully appreciated being inside, and like, being on the treadmill and running on the roof. That whole time I was thinking I had really taken for granted what it's like to run outside and be outdoors. I really took that for granted, because this is hard. This is hard mentally, and this is very slow. And like these miles are not fun. They're not fun miles at all. But it wasn't until I got outside where it just hit me, right? So it wasn't the beauty of it. It was like what it represented. And to me, it represented like I was on the path to actually finishing this thing.
That's awesome. I love it.
That's a good question. That was a good question.
Nice job, man. That was a great question and a really nice one to wrap this up. Well, Michael, you have set the record for the longest Sassquad interview to date. So congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
This was awesome. One of our goals with this whole thing for the RunVenture series is, I think it's kind of twofold: to provide a space for the runner to share their story. And hopefully for you, it's been, maybe a little debrief and being able to kind of chew into all this and share it. But then, also for us, as runners listening to this, I know once it goes up on our podcast, it's going to be out there forever. So I'm excited to hear people, say, I was on my run, I was listening to Michael's story. So thank you again. My gosh, thank you. You're so gracious with your time, and I appreciate you just sharing everything with us.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. And shout out to you, by the way. We didn't talk about this, is that you have, okay, for the finale, you created a buckle that I can't tell you how much that means to me. It has the Game of Hundos on the front, and it's a buckle where you open in the middle, and it has, pictures, photos of my brother and me in the middle and on the back. And that absolutely means the world to me. But that's not the only time that you had given me a custom buckle. You also sent me a custom buckle for finishing the first the indoor series. And like that stuff means a lot to me. Right. And so like, shout out to you for doing that, for taking the time. I know it wasn't easy. But yeah.
Hey, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And like I said to you, it was just a small way for us to say, thank you for what you've done for the running community. Because I mean, there's such a huge, broader impact, and I'm glad we were able to touch on that tonight. So
one last, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when's the next time we're doing this? Running around in circles. running around the block playing Final Countdown.
I'm gonna have to start training for that, because, and Elaine can attest to this, it was, when we were running, I kept saying to her, I'm like, Elaine, I hope I don't trip or throw up on this, because you were running so fast.
It's that barn.
So we're trying to keep up. I had the speaker, Elaine's running with the bullhorn, Yoshiko with the cowbells.
We've got to do that again. That was absolutely fun. That was so much fun. And again, that's the barn effect. The barn effect is real.
Totally. Well, you pick the date and I'll start training for it. Awesome. Good stuff. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It looked like we had a lot of people throughout the whole 2+ hours of chatting. So if you want to learn more about us, Sassquad Trail Running, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Join our Facebook group. You can meet other local runners and hikers. And then again, you can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are streaming: Apple, Spotify, Google Play, wherever, and it'll be up there in the next week or so. So Michael, thank you again.
Awesome. No, thank you.
All right, guys, until we see you again, keep it squatchy.